No More Second Fiddle, an Irish tale by Charles E.J. Moulton. Once upon a time, in good old Ireland, it was on the west coast, in a county called Connemara. And in Connemara, there was a lovely little village, and it was called Eyreville. It had been founded by an aristocrat named Humphrey the Eyre. And Humphrey the Eyre, he'd actually had many children, and his family had ruled Eyreville for generations. Now, sometime in the 20th century, there was a man named Seamus. And Seamus, he lived in Eyreville in the county of Connemara. Well, Seamus, he was a thinker, but he was very helpful. Even as a boy, he was very, very helpful. They called him Helpful Seamus, Dependable Seamus, Nice Seamus, Friendly Seamus. Well, Seamus, he did bits and bobs here and there around the village. When somebody said, "Hi, Seamus, could you bring me a pint?" he would bring them a pint. When somebody said, "Hey, Seamus, fetch my slippers," well, Seamus would fetch them slippers and even bring them a little bit of Irish stew and a Guinness. So Seamus was always helpful. Now, Seamus was a very, very bright, intellectual, fine young man. In fact, he had the brains worthy of 5 other Eyreville citizens. He could talk around the clock. And everybody knew that he was very bright, very, very intelligent. In fact, he played a lot of instruments. He could fix many different things, stagecoaches, and cars, and everything. He could even fix the radio. An amazing, brilliant Irishman. The only problem was he was very nice. And so because he was so nice, people didn't take him seriously. Well, not enough to give him enough jobs. He was always second fiddle. Even in the Eyreville County Orchestra, he played second fiddle. Well, the first fiddle was George O'Flanagan. And George O'Flanagan, he was first fiddle. He was a handsome Irishman. Well, George O'Flanagan, he would come in with his blonde curls hanging slightly over his eyes. And, well, he would charm the ladies. Of course, George was very charming as well. He would, in the breaks, sit there and sipping his Guinness and belching. Bah! But secretly, Seamus, he wished that he himself would be first fiddle. But what could he do? He was a nice man. And George O'Flanagan, he was the popular man. He was popular with the ladies. But secretly, Seamus knew that he was just as good looking as George. Maybe even more good looking than George. But, well, George had the confidence to charm the ladies. So Seamus, he went on day by day, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, just accepting the fact that he was second fiddle. Now, even at home, his wife, Moira, and their children, Siobhan, Sean, and little Bobby, they used Seamus without any thoughts of it whatsoever. They were thinking, well, Daddy's always there. We just have to ask him, what is actually, what do we want? Do we actually ourselves want to go and fetch something? No, we ask Seamus. We ask our daddy. So, well, Seamus always did what he was asked to do. If it was karma or reincarnation who knew? But Seamus did what he was supposed to do. Well, one morning, it was a especially stressy day. There was many Irish guests coming to the household, the Seamus household. His last name was Kelly, Seamus Kelly. Well, it was a very, very, very stressy day. There were 14 guests coming to a jig party, an Irish jig. Irish jigs were going to be played. And Maura was especially stressed out, and the kids, they were screaming at each other and tearing each other apart. It was really difficult, and Seamus, who rarely said anything at all, first he accepted it, the fact, and Maura, she was very nasty, and she commanded him around and said, "Seamus, you idiot! Seamus, what do you think you are? Fetch my slippers! Go to the shop!" Well, Seamus, he decided right then and there he'd had enough. And of course, well, who knew? If it was St. Patrick coming down from the heavens, who knew? But Seamus had had enough. He'd had enough. Seamus decided, if I can't make myself heard, if nobody takes me seriously or respects me, I'll just keep quiet. And that he did. So from then on, for a long time, Seamus did what he was supposed to do, but he sat there quiet. He fetched the people's slippers, but there was no smiling. There was no friendly word. He'd get them their Guinness, but he'd keep quiet. And even Maura said, "Seamus, what's the matter with you? You're not the nice man I married." Well, Seamus didn't say anything. He fetched whatever there was that Maura wanted. But he'd had enough. He said, "I won't be anybody's slave anymore." Well, for weeks on end, he did what everybody expected him to do, and he did his work, and he was still popular with the boss because he did his work better than anyone else. But he kept quiet. And people were starting to wonder, what is the matter with Seamus? Even George O'Flanagan at the concerts, he would ask Seamus, "Seamus, for 3 weeks on end now you haven't said a word. What's the matter with you?" And Seamus shrugged and said, "Nothing." That had been the first word that he said in 3 weeks, mind you. Well, the pub owners, his boss, Maura, and the 3 kids, they were starting to get worried. Even the people in the band, they were saying, "Seamus, what's the matter with you? You're so different." Well, he knew that silence was his only weapon, because he'd been treated like an idiot. He knew he was bright. He knew that he was the most brilliant man in Eyreville. He could dance circles around the jig musicians. He could have even become mayor of the city. Well, that's what he wanted. But who could become a mayor that didn't have the confidence even to become the chieftain of some pub? Well, things would change. Because after 4 weeks, 4 weeks of Seamus being absolutely still, never talking, somebody came to him and said, "Seamus, we miss your lectures." And he looked them in the eye and said, "You always eyed heavenward. You always sighed and pursed your lips when I told you some story from the ancient Celtic tribes. You thought I was silly." Well, the bartender in the pub said, "I acted badly. I'm sorry, Seamus." Well, the 5th week came, and Maura, she said, "You have been talking now for 5 weeks. I miss you. I miss the stories you tell me about your childhood." And well, Seamus said, "Well, you always interrupted me when I told me some story about my childhood. You always said it was silly, and you told your girlfriends how awful you thought it was that I was talking so much. Well, now I haven't been talking for 5 weeks, and you think I should be talking again?" Said Morris. Said, "Well, yeah, I miss to hear your voice." Well, the 6th week came, and Seamus was still silent. And then good old George O'Flanagan, he came over and said, "Hey, Seamus, I want you to play first fiddle at the pub concert next week." I said, you always pushed me aside. In the last 15 years, you just pushed me aside every time that I said I wanted to play first fiddle. Well, George O'Flanagan said, "You know, I miss to hear your happy feet bouncing and stomping to the beat. I need it. Now you're just sitting there fiddling without any emotion. I almost think that you're the reason why I feel so good and have the confidence to woo the ladies." Well, the 7th week came, and he noticed more and more people coming up to him and said, "Hey, Seamus, tell us a story. We haven't heard your stories now for 7 weeks. Please tell us a story. We miss them." And he told them, "You always thought my stories were silly. Why are you now suddenly so so keen on hearing my stories?" Well, the 8th week came, and he started really to become a popular fellow. The 2 months had gone, and Seamus, it seemed, he was the most popular man in Eyreville. Well, even the mayor came and said, we can offer you a job." I said, "Well, I've got a job." "Yes, but you're just a simple accountant in a horse stable. We can offer you to become vice mayor. You can work next to me." And so Seamus said, Why did you? It wouldn't be great to be able to do that, but why should I? You even told me I was a silly man." And the mayor said, "Oh, I didn't mean that, really. You're an original. You're a part of the city. You have to come. You have to come to me." Well, Seamus, he thought about it. He was being treated so well at home. Everybody was begging for him to tell stories. Even George O'Flanagan was saying, "Come and play first fiddle in the orchestra." Well, the day came. It was the 9th week that he'd been quiet. George O'Flanagan, he had a cough, a very, very bad cough, and he said, "I need you to play first fiddle." Well, he said, "All right, I'll play first fiddle, but you'll have to give me a special introduction." "All right." The bartender in the pub said, "Yes." The innkeeper came and said, "Mr. Seamus Kelly, first fiddle in the Eyreville County Orchestra." Well, it was a great concert. Oh, it was really very good. Seamus, he was so popular, they begged him to do extra numbers, da capos, 7 of them. Well, even the mayor was there. Said, "You are the heart of the city. Seamus, you are the heart of the city, and I want you to come and I want you to be my second in command, my first mate at the City Hall." Well, he finished his job as accountant at the stables, and he started as first mate, second in command next to the mayor. And there he worked for 1 year. It was quite amazing. And then one day, well, the mayor, he said, "I'm leaving for retirement. And I actually wanted to give my position of mayor to someone else, but you have proven yourselves to be so good here. We have to give you the position." And so, and the past year, he'd been rather quiet. He told some stories, but he was very much more reserved. And people, when they heard his stories, they were so riveted. But he only did it after they begged him five times. Oh, that was the story of Seamus Kelly. And Seamus Kelly became the most popular, the most incredible, the most brilliant, and the most sought-after man in town, because he made the other people work equally as much as he did. He didn't chase them. Seamus Kelly made them want to hear his stories. Once he did that, once he understood that Seamus Kelly has to be an enigma, a little bit of a secret, that's when his career truly took off. Don't give the audience all too much information, he said many years later, after his retirement. Give them just enough to be interested, and then walk away. Well, that was the story of how Seamus began to say, "No more second fiddle."